Without further say, Vanessa, please, this is your presentation and you can go first. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I'm using this, I guess. Thank you very much. Is this working? Can you hear me? Okay. Yeah, so my name is Vanessa Gray, and the presentation today is about the role of technology, how can we take advantage of technology for early warning systems. This is very much in the context of the newish Early Warning for All initiative, which I think most of you have heard of. And below here, you have the 4 partners of this Early Warning for All initiative. So first of all, 2 words about the International Telecommunication Union, ITU. ITU is a UN agency. It's the UN, we call it the UN Tech Agency, the UN agency in charge of information and communication technologies. And our main objective is to help the world communicate, but also to make sure that every person on Earth can benefit from the opportunities of information and communication technologies. A lot of people actually don't know the ITU, although we are the oldest UN organization, over 150 years old. We are also a little bit special because we have not just 193 member states as other UN organizations, but we are a bit special because we also have private sector members. That means we bring in the private sector companies, the tech industry, the mobile operators, the Googles, the Metas, and so on. And so we have this technology industry network that we combine with the work of our membership. And so this, I think, makes us a very sort of efficient and also relevant organization. Very briefly, I think you've already heard UN initiative on early warning systems for all that was launched in March 22. And the idea is that by 2027, so in only now about 4 years, every person on Earth should be protected by an early warning system. And usually we talk about the 4 pillars of the value cycle of an early warning system. And so just to show, the pillar 1 is the disaster risk knowledge. How much do we know about disasters, about areas that are at risk? This is led by the NDRRMA, that's the UN agency in charge of disaster risk reduction. Pillar 2, critical, is about the detection, observation, monitoring, analysis, and forecasting of hazards. This is obviously critical because we need to know what hazards are happening, led by WMO. And then in orange, this is our pillar, the ITU pillar. Once we know something is happening, there is an alert that needs to be brought to the people at risk. It's about this last mile connectivity and reaching everyone at risk. The last pillar is on preparedness and response capabilities. We've also heard a lot about this at this conference. It's about the communities we actually want to reach. So it is critical to involve them right from the start of the development of any early warning system. And this is led by the Red Cross. I just wanted to highlight that when there's different projects or research going on, and one of the studies that was conducted in 13 countries in Africa and Caribbean showed that within this early warning value cycle, that the communication and dissemination part, this pillar 3, is actually very often one that is a bit not ignored, but it's not properly managed. And so very often maybe we know something is happening, but it's really difficult to send messages to the people at risk. And so I'm really happy that ITU now has this role, that in this new Early Warning for All initiative, we are in charge of the pillar 3, and we bring together key stakeholders to make sure that we can improve this pillar and help overcome some of the gaps. Very important, one thing we always highlight is that today, digital transformation, more people are using the internet, mobile networks are available to most people in the world. This digital transformation brings huge opportunities to reach more people. And I think that this is really important because people have access to the internet, social media, mobile phones, mobile networks. We'll look at that a little bit more. But what we promote is a multi-channel approach, which basically means that you need to take advantage of every communication channel that is available. And this includes, as we can see here, radio, television, cell, mobile networks, sirens, web, social media, and of course also the communities that community-based communication channels that we need to reach. Here at the very top, we have a satellite because there's also a lot of progress at the moment being made in terms of warnings over satellite systems, and this is another important channel. Also very important, this came up a few times during discussions yesterday, is it doesn't matter which channel we use, which communication channel, but it is critical that we use the CAP, the Common Alerting Protocol, which is not a channel, but it is a format, a standardized format to formulate emergency alerts and messages. And this is just to make sure that we have interoperability and consistency across the different channels. And this message includes what is happening, where it is happening, what is the action you need to take, how likely is the event going to happen, and then usually more information if you want to find links or information on other networks. So this is really important, and this is something that's also integrated in our Pillar 3. And by the way, this is something that is used, of course, by Met offices to communicate alerts that have been observed by the Met offices, but it's also used when the message is sent to the people directly at risk. Very important also, so ITU, we are very much about the networks, about the channels. We work with the mobile operators, with the satellite industry, but and I think this is something that has been really highlighted at this conference. The technology is nothing without the humans, without the human side. And it's really about the people. So as part of our Pillar 3, we've included something on that. It's not just about the alerts and the networks, it's about alerts that are understandable and actionable. And so here we work very closely with other partners, including the IFRC, the Red Cross, the REAP, which is also the part of this conference, and those who represent the communities at risk. And this is again very, very important for the work that we are doing. So in terms of the satellite I just mentioned already, this is a lot of research and work is going on at the moment in terms of sending alerts via satellite systems. And what is good is because satellites already exist, but usually you needed sort of these big clunky satellite phones to be able to communicate. But this system is now, alerts are being sent over the satellite system, but they are sent directly to your mobile phone, which is of course a huge advantage when we want to reach people, because as we can see here, one more thing. As part of our work on early warning for all, we're also looking into new technologies, into AI, and how they can support the early warning for all initiative. And each of the early warnings, we have this Friday a first meeting of we have an AI subgroup for early warning for all. If anyone is interested, please let me know. I would just mention the satellite systems, but again, we promote a multi-channel approach. You have to be able to use every available channel to reach people at risk. But one of the main networks and opportunities we see is with mobile early warning systems. So that means that we alert people over mobile networks. And this is because today, 95% of the world's population is covered by a mobile network. That means they live in an area where, in theory, if they have a phone, if they can afford a subscription, they have access to the services of mobile network operators. And so we see this as an excellent opportunity to use these networks to reach people at risk, because the mobile network operators have invested billions all over the world to reach their clients. And we think that it is now time for governments to use these private networks to send public alert messages. Maybe, or probably as important as the coverage is, we know that today also 3 out of 4 people own a mobile phone, which of course makes the mobile phone an incredibly powerful tool. It's basically, the siren in your pocket. We know people always have their mobile phones with them. So this is really an excellent way to reach a large percentage of the population. And here, if you look on the right-hand side, this is the least developed countries, landlocked developing countries, and the small island developing states. Even there, the majority of people own a mobile phone. So you're never going to reach everyone, but you will reach a large percentage of the population. And also those people who would then receive the message can relay, can continue to spread the alert via, again, other channels, community-based channels, radio, TV, and so on. What we see today is, unfortunately, too few countries take advantage of mobile early warning systems. If you look at this map, you can see it's mainly the developed countries, US, Canada, European countries, Australia, New Zealand, that have these mobile early warning systems in place. Most of the developing world does not yet take advantage of this opportunity. And this is one of the big, I think, opportunities that we see today, is to promote, to increase awareness about the things we can do with relatively little money, how we can improve early warning systems by taking advantage of these mobile services and networks. So what is important? Very often when we go to countries and we say, oh, you know, in your country, 90% of the population is covered by mobile networks and the majority of people use mobile phones. Have you thought about using mobile networks for alerting? And they say, oh, no, we're doing this. We're developing an app. And this is not what we're talking about. Apps are great for specific groups. For example, if you want to reach farmers or fishermen or specific groups within a country, but they do not work as public alerting systems because people need to download the app. They need to upgrade when there's new versions. And we've seen from other countries that have tried to and even invested a lot of money in mobile apps that these do not work. So there's two technologies that we refer to when we talk about mobile early warning systems, and that is cell broadcast and location-based SMS. And the main advantage of these technologies is that they are geolocated. So if there is something happening, a disaster hazard in a specific area, only the people in that area will be alerted. The alert is sent via the mobile network, and it's so kind of picked up by the phone. So what's compared to, for example, mobile apps, the opt-in challenges are very limited. That means people will receive the alert because this is something that the phone is supposed to do and supposed to communicate. And yesterday in one of the sessions, the question was what happens at night when my mobile phone is on silence? Well, it's actually overwritten. That means you will still receive the alert even if your mobile phone is on silence, because it is considered to be a critical alert that you need to receive. There's also a distinct sound and notification when we talk about cell broadcast. So when people in the room, I don't know, maybe some of you have received the test messages in European countries, or if you've lived in US and Canada, people are sort of used to it. If there are many people in the room, like there's a distinct alert, a sound from the mobile phone, so everyone knows that something is happening. Also for cell broadcast, and this is often why we really promote, especially cell broadcast as a minimum technology, is that there's no risk of congestion. You can send thousands, millions of messages. There's no congestion, is not a problem, as opposed to SMS, where that is an issue. So this is something to take into consideration when countries look at which technologies to adopt. Also, both technologies support multi-language alerts. For example, roamers, people, tourists that come to a country, they can receive their alert in their own language. It will be translated. So this is obviously very, very useful because you don't want to just alert your own population. You obviously also need to alert everyone else who is in that area at risk. Another, I think, advantage of cell broadcast is that it's a blind technology. So that means the alert is sent, but it's not the people sending the alert do not have any information about who received it, and where this person is in that area at risk. So that's why we call it a blind technology. The inconvenience is that it's not a two-way communication, which provides information, which is the case for the location-based SMS. So just a quick update on or overview of these two different technologies. In Europe, what happened is that all European countries made it mandatory for their countries in Europe to be able to reach their population, a very high percentage of their population, over mobile networks. And this law came into I think was adopted in 2018, and since last year, all the European countries have adopted cell broadcast or location-based SMS, or at least most of the European countries. So this was really a big change. And so this is something actually from the ITU perspective, we promote a regulatory approach. When we go to other developing countries, we say, if you adopt a regulatory approach, very often it just makes the implementation, speeds up the implementation and makes it easier to bring together stakeholders simply because it is a law. And you also bring together the mobile network operators and say, this is now a law and we have to work on this together. So again, we promote this regulatory approach. Just in terms of the technical assistance that now as part of our work on the early warning for all, what we provide is, first of all, when we go to countries, we assess the use of different warning dissemination channels. We see what a lot of countries already use radio or TV. I was in Tajikistan last week, and their radio and TV is extensively used, but not really the mobile network. So this is then something we discuss. And we also then help countries to analyze the necessary steps to implement the most appropriate dissemination channels. We support countries with the bidding documents because, of course, these systems need to be put into place, and we need the support from the private sector. And we also then provide advice, again, on the common alerting protocol, but also on the specific technologies. We also help countries make a cost estimate on the rollout of mobile early warning systems, and then also look at community level last mile warnings that can target specifically vulnerable groups. So we combine these systems. You can have the mobile early warning systems combined with the community-based systems. And very important, because very often we talk about these solutions and they're there and they are relatively affordable, which I think in the overall scope of an early warning system, multi-hazard early warning system, the implementation of these mobile early warning systems is relatively affordable. And so one of the things is we also discuss with donors and with agencies that support early warning systems to say, it's important for us to take advantage of the technology that is there and of the developments, including that today you can reach most people over mobile networks. So we have to, when we get funds, when governments request funds, I think we need to take advantage of these new technologies. And finally, I mentioned the regulatory aspect, and we help countries to assess the legislation that is already in place and propose options to adapt the regulatory framework. And this is just some of the resources that, learning resources that we have available. And if you have any other questions, then please don't hesitate to be in touch. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Vanessa. This was an incredibly perspective from a very important institution such as the ITU for the technology aspect. And now we can transition to how technology is applied by governments in states. And the first example can be given by Mr. John Tacken, that will be representing the Dutch government, who has been at the forefront of technology application for warnings. Thank you, John.
Okay, thank you very much. Lorenzo, will you do some time management? Because sure. Just let me know when. Okay, so my name is John Tacken. I've been working on public warning systems since 2006, already quite a long time. That was when the Netherlands started thinking about a public warning system and using mobile phones. I now represent an organization which is called the National coordination center for control coordination for control rooms. So actually there's a separate organization where all the 112, 911 calls come in, and where people of the fire, police, the ambulance services, and the military police sit together and work on incident response. So they get an incident, they respond, and if necessary, if it's becoming a crisis, which means an incident has an effect on others, then they might use an Anil alert, which is let's say the public name for the public warning service that we have thought of in the Netherlands. My background, by the way, is technology, but I learned a lot about how these organizations work and how they're using the system. So my main presentation is about the technology. I will skip the parts that Vanessa already touched, but I also have some learnings because we've been using it for 10 years already. So we learned quite a lot on the use of the service. So when we started in actually 2009, we started thinking of what do we actually need. So what do we actually want? What we want is we wanted to alert a large amount of citizens via their mobile phone when their life or when their goods are in danger or their health. We wanted to do that in a geo-specific way, so only in an area where the crisis is happening. We want to be able to use it nationwide, but especially during the golden hour. That's in crisis organization. You always talk about the golden hour, since that the first hour is the most effective. And if you have clear instructions for the population on what to do, you can save the most lives. So the first hour is always very important. We don't succeed a lot in sending a message within the first hour, and that has other reasons. But we're still working on that. It's not a technical reason, but more the reason that the professional services like the fire, they first need to, they want to analyze the whole incident, and if there is smoke, they need to measure what's in there before they start communicating. So we always try to convince them to communicate sooner. Also, if you don't exactly know what's happening, you can already start communicating. Another important element is that it needs to be delivered in a very short time. So we said maximum 3 minutes. Well, we have a system that can do it in seconds, so that's ideal. Another important aspect is to be able to inform people on what to do and where to find follow-up information. That's very important. And last but not least, Vanessa also touched it, it needs to be privacy friendly. As a government, you cannot afford to implement a system, at least not in 2023, I think, that has privacy issues or has a sense of privacy issues. I mean, this is very important for us. At that time, we still have a national siren system. A siren system, you can switch it on and you can switch it off. And you can communicate via radio and television what people need to do. So that's what we've been doing for the last 20 years. The idea was to switch off the siren system, but that still did not happen because there will always be stakeholders, or there are still stakeholders that are able to block this decision. I mean, the national siren system costs an enormous amount of money, but still we have not been able to switch it off so far. So we chose for cell broadcast technology as a barrier technology for this service. Basically, quite simple steps how it works. PSAP is maybe a little bit jargon. It's the public service access points where 112 calls come in, where these emergency organizations are sitting together. Basically, what they do, they select an area on a map where the message needs to be distributed, and they type in a message. And the message has a standard structure. We've done also some research on that, on how a message should look like. What should it contain? It should contain from who it comes from, which in the Netherlands is always an alert. So it's not an organization or a person or a mayor or a minister. It's an alert. There's a timestamp in there. There's a source, or where is actually the incident happening, which creates the crisis. There is an advice on what to do, and there is an element of where can you find follow-up information. So those are the elements that we standardly use in a public warning message. Basically, then there's an element here which we call the broker that distributes the message through to the mobile operators. And what the mobile operators do is they say, okay, this is the area you want the message to be distributed. Okay, these are the antennas that we have present there. So they'll activate these antennas, and that can be 2 antennas for a small area, but it can also be the whole country. Basically, for the system, it doesn't really matter, and also not for the speed of delivery. Somebody pushes a button, and a couple of seconds later, everybody's phone starts beeping. And last but not least, at the end of the chain, don't forget, there's the citizen who's there and needs to take action, needs to act. We launched this service in 2012, so we had the 10-year anniversary last year. It was already used 1,200 times, mostly for regional messages. And 80% of these messages have to do with large fires and toxic smoke, asbestos, things like that. That's actually 80% of the cases in the Netherlands. The police is sometimes also using it for evacuation messages. So far, that has not been a success for some reasons, because they've used it to give people advice to stay out of Amsterdam when Ajax became the national champion of football. But that was not very effective. It was not appreciated by the other cities around Amsterdam. People didn't like to receive that message, so the police was not very happy that I'd done that. We had some other examples. We don't have a lot of natural hazards in the Netherlands. We have winds, and we have high water, of course. But it was used for storms, for gas leaks. Also, an interesting case is when 112 was inaccessible in the country. So what do you do if people cannot call, ask you as government for help? So at least we have a tool to communicate an alternative way to reach the government. So that was very effective. It can be used for crowd control, floodings, forest fires, evacuations. But also we had the shooter on the run example, an escaped snake. And also during the first COVID weekend, it was a very nice sunny day in the Netherlands. Everybody got out, and the government decided to send a message to tell people to stay at home, which actually had some effect, but was not really researched, so I don't have any evidence for that, unfortunately. What we do with the system is we test it twice a year, in June and December. So if you're in the Netherlands, the first Monday of June or the first Monday of December, you'll notice that your phone starts making a terrible sound. When we started the service, we reached 9% of the people, 9% of the population. And the last 3 years, we are stable and reaching 90% of the population, which means if we push that button on Monday, first Monday of June and December, within a couple of seconds, over 14 million people will hear their phone making this terrible siren sound. What we do before we send a test message, we have a public campaign on radio, television, social media to make people aware that this message is coming, especially with incoming immigrants also from Ukraine and Syria. We are especially careful because these people come from a war situation. So we have focused communications on those groups. And after a test message, I mean, as Vanessa also already said, we cannot see who actually received the message. we don't know. So what we do is we have panels. So after every test message, we ask people, did you receive it? When did you receive it? But also some other questions like, where's your phone if you're at night? Do you have your phone switched on? So we got a lot of data on how people use their phone, which is very interesting and also very necessary to understand, for example, what you do at night, because that's always difficult for the emergency services. And from these surveys, we also have the data that 81% of our citizens say that they will act based on what they read in an alert message. And what's highly surprised me, at least, is that 94% of our citizens trust the service. I don't know how much people trust their government in the various countries. Oh, I need to be, sorry, 4 minutes. Okay. But that's extremely high. I mean, so that's far more than the government or the king or whoever. So, and you see that also in the press. So if the press thinks that something is very severe, they always mention that there was an alert was sent. So that they use that to communicate that it's important. That's a very interesting development. I'll go to my lessons learned. I still have 4 minutes, but these are, I think, the main slides. So what you see, as far as I know, in all countries, is that incident response and crisis management is very regionally or locally actually organized. That's also the case in the Netherlands. So only this small country that we are, divided in 25 regions who will have their responsibility in their region. Now, in 2012, we gave them a national tool. And the first reaction of those organizations was, okay, I want to be able to send out a message in my own area and my neighboring area. They don't need to get the rights to send messages in my area. So they all protected their own little kingdoms. So what happened is the first time when there was a crisis covering several regions, they started communicating different messages to the population, which was a drama. So after an evaluation, of course, they said, okay, that's not the case. So it made them think outside in instead of inside out. They started with, okay, this is the law. This is what we have to do, and now they think from a citizen perspective. So it really helped them think outside in. I think that's an important lesson. I need to hurry up. Well, communication is a key success factor. You need to set the right expectations. So when can you expect a message and when not? That's very important, especially if you have all these various regions. They also need to act according to the same policy, which is one of our main challenges. And also, yeah, of course, the communications and the message, what you put in the message needs to be correct. It needs to be factually correct. That's very important, but also grammatically. And we saw that happening a couple of times, that you have typos in the message. That's not good. That's not good. And since we now have already 90% coverage, our communication is now mainly focused on target groups like the elderly. That we say, okay, many elderly people they only have their phone on when they expect a call, for example. That's very typical for somebody that's older. So we have a campaign focused on just leave your phone on, make sure that you have it on, because it can be important also for your life. Then some legal things. I think I'll skip that, but it's very fast. It's important to get cooperation of the mobile sector and also assure that there's continuity. And the best way to do that from a government perspective is to put it in a law. We also started with a contract with the operators. But yeah, for a government, that's a risk. If you put it in the law, it's no longer a risk that there is a discontinuity. You also need Google and Apple, because on the end of the chain, of course, as I just showed you, they need to cooperate because otherwise there is no service. my experience that this works quite well, but it's good that we don't have a lot of formal control over what they do. And that's why it's good to cooperate also with other countries, so we can steer them also in the right way. Very important, again, mass communications generate mass response. So if you put a website here or a telephone number, forget it. I mean, the websites will crash unless you have a very robust solution. But also a phone number, you can never handle all the phone calls coming back. So be careful with that. There will always be niches. I mean, you will reach most people via the mobile phone, but not in all situations and not all people. So there are always niches. That's also still the reason that we have our siren system still. There needs to be, there are still stakeholders that don't want the siren system to disappear. Oh, I think Lorenzo's starting to look at me very angry. And then a good advice, and that's not a lesson from us, but public warning system is a very interesting target for hackers or state actors. So mind your cybersecurity. I'll skip most of this. So I think, yeah, I think we have four things or future ideas that we're working on. I think that's my last slide. He's smiling again. So first of all, we like to increase the level of robustness. I mean, this service is important. It is important that it works, but it's even more important that it works if your country is in crisis. So if there's no internet anymore because there's a cyberstorm, it needs to work as well. So that's also why we're thinking about satellite solutions, which have a different risk profile as an addition to what we already have and to terrestrial infrastructures. We also would like to improve the functionality of the service itself. Maybe not so much in mobile networks because we're quite happy with that, but maybe on mobile phone functionality. We like to further expand the distribution networks. We also we have a cap-based connection to public signage, to train stations where alerts are being displayed. So everybody who has a display in the public space, we're trying to convince to connect via CAP to our system, so we reach as many people as possible. And last but not least, we are thinking about adding sensor networks for automatic generation of alerts, which we still don't have now. Now it's always a man or a woman behind the terminal that's doing something. But when something is really important, for example, if we have sudden fall winds, which happened in our country a couple of years ago, when our meteorological institute is capable to predict such a thing like this, yeah, you could maybe do something with sensors. So that's another direction that we are thinking. Thank you very much. This was my presentation. I'll get back to you.
Thank you, John, very much. Thank you for your very insightful presentation on how technology works in the Netherlands. Right now, we are going to transition from the Netherlands experience to the experience of Nepal. Completely different countries and different geographies, probably different kind of natural hazards or incidents and warnings need to be used. So here with us, we have the director of the National Disaster Risk Agency, Mr. Pokhrel. Anil, can you hear us?
Loud and clear, Lorenzo.
Perfect. The floor is yours. Let's try to stay in the 15 minutes to see so that we can give opportunity to the audience to ask questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks to the organizers and to Everbridge, and I'm really glad to be part of this event today. I'm really happy to be part of this distinguished panelists as well. What I would like to do is to share Nepal's experience, especially in terms of, again, reconceptualizing early warning system. I'd want to start by sharing, again, how does the National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Authority operates? What are we doing in terms of the conceptualization of the multi-hazard early warning system? And then finally also share some of our way forward in terms of, again, having a multi-hazard early warning systems for all. So the National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Authority was established in 2019 December. It's just been over 3.5 years. We are an apex institution, which is headed by our Right Honorable Prime Minister. He heads the National Council. And below that is what we have is the National Executive Committee headed by our Home Minister. I, as a Chief Executive, serve as a member secretary to both the council and the National Executive Committee. These bodies make the decisions, especially in terms of policies and programs going forward. The reason that I'm bringing up this is one of key decisions that was made earlier this year on early warning system. So the decision has been that NDRRMA, along with other relevant ministries, takes a lead on conceptualizing a multi-hazard early warning systems in Nepal. And so what we've done is to realize that we've been able to bring together around 15 ministries and departments, including the key actors for each of those pillars that was mentioned by Vanessa earlier in this presentation. So we have a range of institutions such as the Hydromet Agency. We also have the Mines and Geology that does look at the landslides and the seismic. The Hydromet office looks at the forecast for water, weather, and climate. We've also been able to bring in other relevant ministries for response, communications. So this task force is being able to work together, inviting other related experts to design Nepal's architecture for a multi-hazard early warning system. What we have done is come up with key set of activities and key priority areas for setting up of the early warning system based on our previous experiences, but also learning from other country experiences. So we've been able to identify these strategy activities that amounts to a total of around $600 million for the next seven years. So this initiative also actually times well with the UN Secretary General's announcement of early warning for all initiative. Later this month, we're also hosting a 2-day national workshop on early warning systems for all. This will be jointly hosted by the National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Authority, jointly with the UN office, along with all of its key partners, including private sector, academic institutions, and others. We'd be sharing this national concept note with a wider body of audiences, finalize this concept note by the executive committee, and then roll it out for implementation. That's where we stand in terms of the national concept note on multi-hazard early warning systems for all. Now, I also want to say again, where are we in terms of realizing this concept? So especially if you look into where the forecast we've been able to progress substantially over the last 6 to 8 years, mainly through climate investment funds. We've been able to make good improvements in setting up of real-time stations, monitoring water, rainfall, and also investing into better forecast models. We've also been, especially since the establishment of NDRRMA, we've been able to do quite substantive work, especially in terms of understanding risk, understanding and modeling various hazards, particularly floods, earthquakes, also landslides, lightning, and others. But the most critical gap is around the third component, especially on communicating these forecasts and these risks, so that decision makers and actors could take action on the ground. What we have is an early warning for floods that has been able to save quite a number of lives in the past. From what we used to lose around 80 to 100 people a year, this has gone down to something around 40 to 60 people a year. So this is, again, thanks to the early warning systems for floods. But building on this experience, we need to expand it to more of a nationwide and make use of the power of communications and tools such as the ones that was mentioned by Vanessa in her earlier presentation. What we seriously lack is, again, mobile-based systems that uses powerful techniques such as message broadcasting, cell broadcasting, or polygon-based, location-based SMSs. What we have is, until so far, we've been able to, again, blast few thousand messages in certain languages. So it's not been able to, we've really been able to serve all the population in the country. And secondly, also only kind of sending it messages through regular conventional messages doesn't really effective in terms of, again, getting 100% landing rate in the mobile phones. So this is exactly where we've been having the discussions with some of these solutions provider, such as Everbridge and other companies. But we're also equally, on the other hand, working with development partners such as the World Bank and ADB and the UN, again, in the light of the Early Warning for All initiative. And so this is where NDRRMA is convening all set of actors, particularly the ministries and the departments, including development partners, to really help realize this national concept node, which is also aligned with the multi-hazard, the Early Warning Systems for All initiative. So what we see is communications is a critical component for an effective early warning system. Our plan is to, again, start with certain geographic areas, certain areas that we've recently experienced unprecedented amount of floods and landslides. One of which is an area that was supposed to transfer water from a basin nearby Kathmandu, the capital city, into Kathmandu. We experienced massive landslides and a debris flow in 2021 monsoon. And so this is an area where we'd want to, again, pilot a more comprehensive early warning system. Similarly, so for certain sectors such as transport, agriculture, and water management, we started working on decision support systems with support from the World Bank, ADPC, and institutions such as RIMES. So we're currently working on designing decision support systems for early warning systems. And also, on the other hand, again, after all, again, it's the responders who would be able to take actions at the ground. We've also been able to design and implement a voluntary management information system, which we've been able to bring in around 100,000 plus volunteers nationwide. These are mapped by and trained by the municipal governments, but also in support with substantially with the Red Cross here in Nepal. So jointly with Red Cross, we've been able to work in terms of, again, identifying those volunteers, getting into a common portal. These all informations are housed within what we call is a BIPAD portal, BIPAD, BIPAD portal. BIPAD is a word in Nepali that means disaster. So it's a portal that actually houses all these information together into one system. Now, to take this further, our biggest challenges are, again, to make various actors, various agencies, including the private sector, the academia, and also other agencies who are involved and interested on this, to really understand all these four components, the need for, again, working together among various agencies, the need to work across multiple levels of governance, the national, the federal, the provincial, and the local level. We also have the district emergency operations centers. So the whole challenges us around mainly around three folds, mainly around, again, having a clear clarity in institutional roles, having systems such as decision support systems, having systems that would be able to enable us to, again, deliver some of those messages, but not only use one particular communication channel, but use a broad suite of communication channels such as social media. That's very, very active, very, very effective in the Nepali case, but we've not been able to really, again, host a channel as such to communicate using such channels. FM radios are very effective, but again, having a CAP-enabled systems that allows us to reach out multiple channels, radio, FM, television, mobiles is a way for us to really go forward. All this requires a massive collaborations between various agencies, national and international, expert solutions provider, but also with researchers and also sharing of experiences such as this one today, where we agencies like ours get exposed to experiences from other countries. So this is what we've been able to kind of work it out. By this event, I'd also want to mention that We'll soon be hosting this event later this month. We'll be sharing again through the organizers and also through Everbridge's channels this event, or 2-day national workshop event, where we'll be discussing some of these ideas. You all will be invited. We'll be free. We'll also be able to have it online and provisions for you all to participate as well. So with these words, I'd like to again end my deliberations over here and look forward to engaging dialogue over the next remaining period. Over to you, Lorenzo. Back to you.
Thank you very much, Anil. Let's have a round of applause for this incredibly interesting perspective from Nepal. Let's go back here. Yes. No. Okay. Right now, I'd like to transition to a very the last panelist. That is the one that I have the honor to work with. It's our Senior Director for Public Warning, Manuel Cornelisse, that is going to talk and focus more on the technology aspect of what Everbridge does and how can we work with the institutions, with the governments, so we're looking at the future from a technology perspective. The floor is yours. Thank you, Manuel.
Thank you very much, Lorenzo.
Will you take the time? Or?
Yeah, sure. Please let me know when to shut up and finish, and then we can have some interesting questions, hopefully. I think the title of this session was Past, Present, and Future. I think we've heard the present. We've heard what the ambitions of the future will be. What I will try to do is tell you my view of what the reason is why this particular technology is useful and why it is used and implemented across the world. And currently, I heard a number, 2 million people are already being kept safe by this technology. But the fundamental question is, why is it the case? And what can we learn from the history of the introduction of these systems? Because, well, the technology has been around for 20 years. 15 years ago, myself and my colleagues who have been pioneering the technology were convinced that in the next 5 years, the whole world would be kept safe by the technology, because in our minds, it was a no-brainer. This technology ticked all of the boxes. It would work wonderfully. That was in 2006. We're now in 2023. Of course, from 0 to 2 billion is a lot, but still we have 75% to go. If we are going to fulfill the ambitions of early warning for all, it means that we have 6 billion people still to go. And the main question is, why did all of those nations take the time that they needed to get to the point of introduction? And hopefully I can share you at least my insights on it. So, multi-channel, heard it before, location-based SMS apps focused on mobile technology because it's the warning device everybody nowadays is carrying with them. So on the spot, in real time, you can reach those people who need guidance. And that's the thing that this technology does for that particular moment, for that particular location, give guidance to safety, motivate and activate people to act upon it. So if you look at the map, most of the current customers implementing this technology have chosen one of the mobile channels, either cell broadcast, location-based SMS. But if you look into the future, most of them, as Ms. Gray already indicated, cell broadcast is at least part of the mix. So some countries have already started with location-based SMS, but they are now in the process of adding cell broadcast as well. During the last couple of months, there was a big increase in number of countries within Europe. The reason for them to act was the regulations put in place to incentivize from a top-down manner to actually implement. And that's one of the lessons that, that I've learned, is that from a technology point of view, everything's already in place. It's proven, it's fairly simple. However, the projects themselves and the environment of multi-stakeholders, the collaboration between public and private, that's in practice the difficulty that need to be addressed. So, cell broadcast. Why? What's so special about cell broadcast of the technology? Why not use an app? We're now in the 5G era. We have broadband internet connections to our phones. I can watch Netflix in 4K on my device. Why would I need this 80s technology to warn me? The reason for this is very technical, and the last couple of years has been all about a technology debate. Why this technology? Why that technology? Finally, in the end, cell broadcast came out on top, and these are the reasons why. Reach. So you need to be able to reach the at least the critical mass required for people to take action. The key for doing so is handset support. All of the handsets need to support the technology in the way it's standardized, because it needs to be the same across the world. And the only way to do so in the world of telecom is to standardize. We're currently at a point that is the case. So it's supported on Android and iOS by default. You may not see it if there are people in the audience from abroad, from countries where wireless emergency alerts is not introduced yet. In your home country, if you look at your iPhone on the notification center, you won't see it. If you open your same phone without you doing anything, you're now in the UK. The UK are offering wireless emergency alerts. Those settings are there. They are now present in your phone without you doing anything. And what I've learned is that in developing countries where officials have been visiting other countries without them doing anything, they have been warned for imminent threats. And that opened up their eyes, that without them even knowing it, they would be kept safe wherever they are traveling. Timing, we heard John talking about. We can reach millions in seconds. Why? Because it's truly broadcast. It's like radio. So your mobile phone is continuously communicating with your mobile network. Even without you using the phone, it's still continuously negotiating with the phone what to do. As part of that negotiations, it's called signaling. Public warning is part of it. So it will always work. Even if the networks are congested due to overload, or maybe when the networks are shut down because of a terrorist attack, it will still work. Even if you don't have a SIM card, if you run out of credit, as long as you have a connection from a mobile network, you will be kept safe. It's by nature location specific. So it's truly broadcast. So in each and every cell, so a mobile network is built up out of all kinds of antennas, thousands, 10,000, 100,000 of antennas who are servicing a certain area. And what cell broadcast does, it takes one of those cells and it broadcasts the alert in that area or in that cell. And everybody serviced by that cell will receive the alert in one go. So the mapping of a target area to cells, that's something that our technology does. However, then you're bound to the actual coverage area of that cell. Who is being serviced by what cell? And a cell can be very small. In a shopping mall, it will be a small cell. But if you're in the rural area, it will be a large cell covering maybe 10 kilometers, 10 square kilometers. So granularity is something which was, well, it could have been better. However, that has been addressed by device-based geofencing. So the same technology which is helping you to navigate from A to B is now as an overlay available, providing meter accuracy geotargeting. Privacy, maybe a downside of the technology, but on the other hand, if you look at the masses, it's a mass communication tool. If you start communicating one-on-one, it's difficult to handle a discussion with millions. So it's unaware of the users. Everybody in the area providing coverage will receive the alert. Security. Only the serving mobile network can issue the alert, i.e. only the government can provide these alerts. I think that's one of the reasons why in the Netherlands the service is trusted, because they know it can't be spoofed, it can't be hacked. If this guidance to safety is received, it comes from the officials. And I think looking back, and that's what I will do later on, the call for action. So having a dedicated ringtone for emergency alerts. And I will later on let you hear how that sounds like. So there is a dedicated ringtone, a dedicated vibration specific for alerts. The ringtone is protected. So Hollywood is not allowed to use that ringtone in movies, because if we're all in the theater, we need to be able to distinguish between what's happening on the screen and what's happening on the ground in real life in the theater. It has a pop-up acknowledgement, defined categories of some severity levels. And that makes it a standardized global technology which actually works from New Zealand to Canada, Chile, Taiwan, and all of the countries in between. Although they're differently called, so you have, although it's standardized, the implementation itself is called differently across the world. CMS, EU Alert, NL Alert is the local variant, KPAS, Korea, etc. And the experts, the technology providers, the people who design mobile networks, they recommend to use our broadcast as a minimum for public warning, including the ITU. So this will get your attention. It will wake you up. It will override your silent setting, even if you are asleep. So it needs to be used carefully because it can scare a lot of people. It has a dedicated caption related to the severity level, a pop-up which the user needs to acknowledge. And as I mentioned before, it's by default available on Android and iOS. Both Google and Apple need to be made aware that the service is being offered, in what way, what severity levels, and then it's just a matter of selecting that service. And as I mentioned, if you look now in your notification center, this is a screenshot I did this morning of my phone in the UK, and I see extreme and severe. When I go back to the Netherlands, I will only see one. I will see emergency alerts, one slider. So per country, you have specific implementations of the service. John already mentioned how this flow works. You have the emergency management center issuing the alert, the target area, and then the mobile network will decide based on a sub-broadcast center what cells need to be addressed. So coming back to the lessons learned, so past, present, and future. If I now look back, there are several critical moments in the history of sub-broadcast-based public warning. I think the first one was in the 80s when, as part of the initial version of mobile phones, they already thought about, wouldn't it be great to have a location-based service as part of the mobile network? And one of the use cases they had in mind was public warning. So the first sub-broadcast system was introduced in 1996, and as part of those use cases, the first initial discussions with the Dutch government started in 1999. In 1999, it was really early adopter stage for this technology. So in 2004, they did a trial to see whether this new technology was actually fit for purpose. And that resulted in the decision in 2008 to actually implement it nationwide, and those introductions started in 2010. But although I'm Dutch, and the Dutch, they were the forerunners, but I think the critical pivotal moment was the US. So on the back of 9/11, yesterday evening, we remembered what unfortunately happened. One of the criticism was that there was inefficient ability to communicate with people out of home, on the go, and a system needed to be designed. So the FCC asked ETIS, the American standardization body, to design a system which was able to provide these critical warnings, taking the user requirements which we've seen from the Dutch government into account. And they came up with the use of cell broadcast as the technology to provide the alerts to the phone. However, the user experience was not standardized. And that's, I think, the critical thing which we now have, is that we have the ringtone, the pop-up, the worldwide uniform user experience of the service. So in 2010, in the US, the implementation started going live in 2012, also in the Netherlands. And in Europe, the UK and France, they, together with the Netherlands, they started this process of the introduction. Didn't happen. Why? In the last 10 years, I've been speaking to a lot of countries, emergency managers, who are very interested in the service because it's a no-brainer. What it offers is fantastic. For the price of 2-3 fire trucks, you could have the ability to actually guide people to safety in real time. In reality, these are complex projects, not from a technical point of view, but they involve multiple stakeholders in the government. They involve the cooperation of mobile operators. So regulatory elements come into play, and funding. Access to funding, both within those governments, but also from donors coming in, and the access to that funds is proven to be difficult. But then you could say, well, in Europe, funding enough. But the complexity of these projects is massive because mobile operators, they have a commercial job to do, and public warning is something that they, from a personal point of view, appreciate, value, but from a business point of view, it doesn't make any sense. Mobile operators are commercial organizations. They need to do more with less people continuously. So having these type of projects, which are good for the country, but they don't make any business sense. So the cooperation with the mobile operators needs to be found. And Article 110, the European Union mandating the members to implement, was a key step forward. And I think that enabled the next step. And if you look in the future, early warning for all is looking back and looking forward. I think another pivotal moment to actually push the technology into the world, and hopefully altogether we can come to the 8.5 billion of users in the next couple of years. Thank you.
Thank you, Manuel. I'm biased, but I found it very interesting. Looking at the technology, we lost Anil. Well, let me just transition to the Q&A moment. I will start asking one question each to start. And Vanessa, I'd like to start with you. We started with you, so the first question will go to you. And my question is, from your perspective, as the pillar leader, as the leader for Pillar 3 of the Early Warnings for All initiative that has been mentioned these 2 days, what do you see as the key barriers for countries to implementing early warning systems?
Thank you very much. I think the key barrier, and again, it's focused on the Pillar 3 and on the technology, is the lack of awareness of what certain technologies can do, the cost, which again, relative to the entire early warning system, is relatively low. So that's why those are one of the things we're working on, is to highlight the opportunities of these. And I think we've highlighted the sort of low cost technologies that can be implemented. Another big thing for us that we see And many countries have early warning systems, projects in place, and that very often the stakeholders, mobile network operators, but also the telecom regulators, the ministries of telecommunication are not part of the discussion, so it really never comes up. So again, a little bit, you know, the opportunities of technology are not, we don't take advantage of those. And then another one, I think, but that's not so much related to this, an overall issue is that you need a governance structure. You need to know who pushes the button, who is responsible for the alert. And if that's not in place, of course, even the best technologies, you know, cannot help. Thanks.
Thank you, Vanessa. Yes, I hear processes are needed. Absolutely. John, coming to you. What we are in an academic environment, so research is important. And I'd like to know, from your perspective, what kind of research do you keep bringing up and keep studying to make the systems effective?
Thank you. Very good question. Like in the beginning, what we did is we asked the Delft University to advise us on actually on the content of the message. So what needs to be in there? How do you need to communicate via a tool that is completely new to everybody? And also the technology is new, so it looks like an SMS, but it's not really an SMS. So you have to not only explain the message needs to be right, but also it's delivered in a way that's uncommon to people. So we asked the University of Delft to make us a standard structure for messages, but also a message database. And that's actually also something that we've included in the system. So there's a kind of library in there, which is developed by the University of Delft, with prepared messages also in various languages. We also did research on the actual impact of messages. So how do you communicate? How do you make sure people act? And one of the interesting findings that I find myself is that people always like to search for a second source. So that's the first thing people do. Is this true? Now, what some of the things we found out, which is also I think interesting, is that if somebody else or my neighbor also receives the same message, it's already considered as a second message. So it's enough for people to take action. And for the rest, we also learn by doing. That's a different way of research. For example, your siren just reminded me that when COVID started, we got a lot of complaints by people that had this on their headset unexpectedly. And it's as you heard, it's a terrible sound, and it's very intrusive. And if you have your headsets on a high volume, you really you really can have people complain that they had some ear problems afterwards, which is maybe not completely true, but I mean that's also what we learn by doing.
Absolutely. I think learning by doing is part of a different kind of research, but still extremely relevant. Anil, I have a question for you. Are you there? Yes.
Yes.
So I was drawn by the fact that you talked about when you started to implement some early warning systems, you saw a decrease in the number of lives lost. And my question is, in your perspective, given your role, how important is the type of dissemination technology to achieve the goal of saving lives? Like the type of technology related to the number of deaths. How technology, what's the role of technology? How important is it in choosing which kind of technology?
Thanks. I think this is a very important question. At least in the case of Nepal, what we see is the use of all forms of technology and all forms of media. While urban areas are well connected with cell phones, mobile networks, There's a much better use of apps and using mobile as a device for communication. But especially in the case of Nepal, if you go into the rural areas, this is where it gets difficult. Not everyone has access to mobile phones. This is where the FM radios become the most effective forms of communications, where this is also where a lot of people would also have television. But the challenge is, again, we are a very much of an agrarian society, and so people have to be working outside of their homes in their farms, and to be able to listen or to read these messages. The best form of, again, technology in this case, especially in the rural areas, in far off mountains and villages, this is where FM radios, sirens, social media channels are considered much better. We've done a study to look at various technologies and various forms of medias that are effective. This was done with the support of BBC Media Action, a firm that specializes on risk communications. And this is where we've been able to identify some of those hotspot locations, and where which forms of media and technology are more effective. And this results that I shared are basically the findings from this study. So it's mainly, again, all forms of media, and in particularly mobile phones in the urban, but it's the FM radios in the rural areas, especially during the daytime. I'll pass it back to you. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Anil. Given we are in a bit of a time constraint, but I learned that it's the same in also the other sessions. I'd like to open the questions for the audience, and please signal if you have a question. I think we had a question over there since a while. Then here, okay, thank you.
My name is Zermina, and I've done my master's in disaster management, and I've been teaching also disaster management courses for quite some time. And presently I'm doing my PhD project on climate change, specifically on wildfires in Pakistan. So whenever we have talked about early warnings, there is no doubt that technology plays an important role. And of course, technology nowadays is just the need of our everywhere in the world, in every corner. But there is a question that comes to mind, that when a catastrophic disaster hits a particular location, and sometimes we lose the communication. So in that scenario where there is no communication, by communication, I mean the mobile towers. So what could be done, and how could the early warnings be disseminated? I do understand there are different alert levels. And of course, for every alert level, there is a specific duration of time where you give the first warning maybe in 72 hours, the next in 48, and then the last one in last 24 hours. So what could be done? I mean, is there any research done in that aspect as well? I would like your comments on that. My question is specifically from John. I think he presented that part of the technology.
Let's take more than one question at a time, so we can expedite the process a little bit. I think the gentleman over here. What?
I forget the question.
Hello. My name is Olaf Neusner. I'm an independent consultant. It was said that the accuracy is meter precise. On the other hand, it says the cell broadcasts to every body or every phone in near a certain site. How does that fit together? Or is it, for example, that only those people in a flood-prone area, according to a flood hazard map, get the message, and the others, which are still within the reach of the tower, do not get the message?
Okay. You had a question, lady over there, and then we can answer.
I'm interested in the use of technology in the sense of the feedback mechanism. So obviously we know from a lot of experience that just push notifications doesn't necessarily indicate success. access to information doesn't necessarily mean action. So I just wondered how you can see technology, and particularly some of the technology you have highlighted today, from those receiving the message, and how we might utilize that better.
So we can go John, Vanessa, and Manuel answering 1, 3, 2. Good.
Okay. I hope I still remember the question. Your question was about wildfires. Yeah. Well, this is a typical example of the fact that due to the crisis that causes your need for providing information, also your infrastructure is hit by the same crisis, which means that you have to do a proper analysis where your risks are, and if you have only a mobile network and there is a fire, then the risk is indeed that one of the cell towers gets burned and you lose your ability to communicate. The same thing, for example, is for cyber storms. If you have an attack from a foreign country, for example, that's also a risk. If you have a flooding, that's also a risk. So you also need to do a good risk assessment on which risks can actually happen in your country or your specific situation, and try to find an alternative distribution mechanism. So if a mobile network, in this case, does not work, then you can, for example, use a satellite connection, which can never be hit by a fire, but has other risks. So every distribution mechanism has its own risks, so that's also why we believe in multi-channel distribution ways, especially if there's nothing seriously going on. The communication system works, but when you need it, it needs to be resilient and robust, and it needs to be able to withstand the actual crisis itself, and that requires a proper analysis of the risks in your country. Was that an answer to your question?
And yes, just to emphasize also, as part of the early warning for all work on Pillar 3, we work very closely with the satellite industry, and I think over the next few years, because at the moment it's more based on EU, and I think there will be a lot of progress to have these satellite systems combined with mobile phones. We will see a lot of change there, and that these will provide really good backup systems. I also wanted to say, yesterday there was a session in GSMA. They mentioned also they do a lot of research on how to actually protect the mobile network infrastructure in cases like fires or floods. There's a lot of sort of training and capacity building going on, where to position the towers and where to, cables to dig them deep under to make sure that they're protected. So there's work also going on. Just for the feedback mechanism, I think similar response in terms of we need multi-channel. So cell broadcast is not going to work for feedback mechanism. We also look into location-based SMS, where you do have two-way communication. So a number of countries are now setting up not just cell broadcast, but cell broadcast in combination with location-based SMS, where people can, respond. Again, in a big scale disaster, the government then needs to be able to actually, receive these messages, analyze them, and actually act upon them. So I think that's always the issue with the two-way communication. Of course, also social media, huge opportunities there to analyze photos. And one of the things I mentioned this in my presentation is next Friday, we will have the first call of the subgroup of AI. And one of the areas there is how to use AI to make sure that all this information can actually be processed, and that we can get something useful out of this. So I hopefully, again, in the next few years there will be progress also in that area. Thank you.
Unfortunately, the lady who asked the first question about resilience of communication channels has left, but there is a nuance. I think the basic message is that multi-channel is the way forward. However, having no mobile service does not mean that there is no connection between the phone and the mobile network. Even if several cell towers are burned down, washed away, that coverage area will be taken over by other cells. Mobile operators, for instance, in the Netherlands, to do power saving, they switched off half the mobile network at night in order to save power. But there's still service. So what happens if you don't have any service on your phone? The network is overloaded, and that's typically part of a crisis. If something is happening in a certain area, a lot of communication happens, and you get in an overload. An overload means that there is no service available for you as a user to get service. However, there's still communication between the phone and the network. So cell broadcast public warning will continue to work. Even if you're not allowed to do any action or service on the network, you still receive emergency alerts. Even, as I mentioned, during lockdown of the network for regular users due to a terrorist attack, you don't get any service, there's no service, but public warning based on cell broadcast will continue to work. So if we then look at geo-targeting, so basically broadcasting in certain cells will mean that the granularity in the surface area of that cell provides the granularity of geo-targeting. However, the ambition of the FCC was always to have meter accuracy geo-targeting, having the ability to evacuate people from one side of a block in one direction and the other side of the block to another direction. So the think tank of ETIS started working on how can we resolve this. And what they did is look at the phone's own capability of geolocating itself, because we navigate all the time using our phone. And it uses multiple sources of information to get an as accurate positioning of the phone itself. So what does device-based geofencing mean? The warning message will be disseminated in the area, but as an additional filter, the original polygon will be added to the alert without the user knowing, and the phone will, based on its own location, determine in addition whether to show the alert or not. So it's backwards compatible, so phones who do not yet support device-based geofencing will just get the alert based on the granularity which is currently being used. And those phones who do support this will get the alert on a meter accuracy level. Very clever.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Let's have a last round. I see there one. Is there any questions for Anil?
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay.
No. Yeah.
So perfect.
Okay, brilliant. Yeah. Hi, Anil. My name's Harry. I'm a master's student here at UCL. Nepal is such an interesting country when we're talking about DRR. It's so varied. Many of the population live in remote locations. Inherently, the country suffers many seismic risks, many of them cascading. Pair that with a lot of vulnerable infrastructure being decimated by previous seismic earthquakes and floods in the past. How do you manage these extra risks when we're looking at emergency notifications? Because obviously, if we're dealing with people in remote locations where, as I say, cascading risks lead to landslides, rockfalls, various hazards which transcend incredibly quickly, how effective is the emergency response texts and notifications in those scenarios in a country which just has so many varying risks?
Anil, did you hear the question well?
Yes, loud and clear.
Perfect.
So exactly that's.
Let me just take the last question and then I will let you answer.
Hi, I am Francesco Colosio from ETH Zurich. I'm a geophysics master student. My question is from Mr. John Tacken. I'm quite surprised, or like I wonder how it works. So it's more of an interest I have. You said that the NL alert was used to also by the police for advice, for example, not to come to Amsterdam, that kind of stuff. So are you not afraid that this kind of alert could be used for mass control and therefore people would not trust it that much for life-threatening situation and more identified as a government way to control, I don't know, it could be a demonstration one day or this kind of situations. And then just a quick question. We didn't talk much about sensors and connectivity of sensors. We talked just about connectivity towards the end users, towards the citizens. Do you have any plans about connectivity? For example, we deployed seismic stations that are self-standing, so using SIM cards, especially in countries like Nepal and that kind, you cannot rely on Wi-Fi. So there are multiple technologies now that allow, I don't know, for example, Swarm from SpaceX, if you've heard, it's basically, it allows SIM cards to connect anywhere they are. So do you have any plans on implementing some kind of these technologies to enhance sensor connectivity as well? Thank you.
Anil, you can go ahead and answer the first question, and if you'd like to tackle also part of the second one, and then we'll see from who, John from the panel to answer here.
Sure. Let me begin by, again, sharing again what we've gone through over the last couple of years, especially in terms of our experience of the 2015 earthquake and the recent catastrophic floods and landslides, especially in far-flung remote areas. We were fortunate in the 2015 earthquake case because it did lead to quite a heavy casualty, 9,000 people, more than 600,000 buildings, and quite a huge number of infrastructures. But what we were fortunate back then is our communication system was still intact. We cannot be fortunate to the same extent that we were in 2015. We've experienced, again, large-scale debris flow, large-scale landslides and floods within the last 3-4 years, ever since NDRRMA got established. What we've noticed is, in such cases, again, doing communications is especially challenging, especially when cell phone towers are wiped out by floods and landslides. At times, what happens is our electrical systems also get disrupted. So lack of energy, lack of power does lead to, again, the dysfunction of the communication system. Also, the complexity adds on because, again, most of these incidents do happen during the monsoon period where you don't have enough sunlight hours to recharge your batteries if you have a backup system. It's raining and it's cloudy, and so you don't get enough solar radiation to back up your chargers. So this is where, again, our communication systems gets really complicated, and the only form of, again, reaching out two-way communications is really difficult. However, again, as also to answer to previous questions, what we could do if our systems collapse, this is where we've been able to find FM radio has been very effective in terms of, again, delivering one-way communications from the center. But it's so difficult for us to hear back from the communities. And the only way for us is, again, to rely on our emergency operations and our police, armed police force who work also as responders, using the high frequency radio channels is what we've been able to, again, at least manage those incidents in those local areas. But increasingly, we've begun realizing the need to have, again, internet, satellite-based internets installed in certain hotspot areas. So the role of communications is so much important, and especially looking at redundancy, looking at, again, how you design resilience into such communication systems is so important. What we've also done is our response systems was until so far very much only reliant on the the security agencies working as responders, but over the last year, we've been able to also, as I mentioned earlier, the volunteer management system. And so we've been able to map each and every volunteer, their cell phone numbers, their landline numbers, and their geolocation. So this allows us to, again, reach out to those specific responders and have a two-way dialogue using cell phones, using regular landline phones in terms of planning a response. Things were really bad even until the last decade, but with this advancement in, again, communications, radio, FM, mobile, the penetration of it even in the rural areas has really allowed us to be effective in terms of responding to disasters. But having said that, again, the challenges still persists. And so this is where we're increasingly looking at, again, new forms of communications, using, again, CAP, using, again, cell broadcasts, using location-based SMSs. So these are technologies that's already available in the market, but we've not been able to, again, be aware about this. So NDRRMA's role is very much in terms of making the communication ministries and departments, the mobile carriers, aware about these technologies and start implementing in a certain geographic area. So I'll stop here, pass it back over to you.
Great, thank you. I'll answer the last question. I've been asked to keep it brief, so maybe if you want, I can give you more extensive answer on a one-by-one basis. Your question was about using the service for crowd control. You're absolutely right. We started with a policy that we promised the population, you will be warned if your life, your health, or your goods are in danger. That's our promise. What the police did with this example when Ajax was national champion, and the life of the people in Amsterdam Center was at risk because it was crowded. And but what they did is they used the system to inform the whole region around Amsterdam, of which maybe 1% or 0.5% had the intention to come to Amsterdam. So they informed everybody. So it was not very effective, and they got criticized. So we did an evaluation. For this use case, it will no longer be used because it doesn't live to the promise that we made to the population. So yeah, that was considered as not the right approach. The second, very briefly about sensor networks, we are looking at that. We are only looking at risks, of course, for our country. I think we're still quite far from that because we still want to do some pilots, and we really have to have a reliable source with sensors before we automatically start distributing alerts. I think we're a couple of years ahead. It will take a couple of years before that will happen.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Anil. Thank you to all the panelists and our audience for staying with us. Let's give our panelists a round of applause. I found this session extremely fascinating, and I hope you did too. If you have more questions for any one of the panelists here, you can reach us either online or find us out here. Thank you very much for participating. I hope we'll see you around.